merrily. Yeah, that's our attitude. Life is but a dream. Yeah, that's the cold, hard truth. Life is but a dream. It appears, it disappears, it ends. Infinity on both sides, right? There's so much wisdom in that little poem, and it's stuck around forever. But instead, we have to go looking at complicated books to figure this out.
As I've learned through the show, they say that the curse of human life is that once you die, you realize that human life was the dream.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows what happens when you die, right? That's kind of the mystery that makes it all fun.
Yeah.
But to your point about being attracted to like Indian sort of ideals and memories, I have found as I grow older, I gravitate more and more towards those things. Like,
Do you mind that I'm bringing it up so much in this
no,
conversation?
it's fine. It's fine. I think it's fine.
It's just a part of my identity.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I'm Indian too, like, by origin, and probably will end up back there at some point when I'm old enough. I think about it. I like India. I love India. These are my brothers and sisters, right? These are my people. I am one of them. So
There's a couple of places I would love to take you to in India. I told you about one of them in the car, which is the mountains, like Himalayas. It's 3 secrets. Like, that's where you actually get the wisdom of the sages. You feel it in the air. The other place is Varanasi,
Yeah.
Which is according to Sanatan, it's the oldest city in the world. And you do feel that. It is chaotic, but there's another part of it that's extremely quiet. There's a part of Banaras called the Manikarnika Ghat, where they perpetually burn bodies for the sake of cremation. They say that when you stand at the Manikarnika Ghat and you view the bodies burning, whatever's inside you froths up and comes on to the outside. And that's where something inside you shifts. So for me, I just became very curious and I became more serious about this journey of podcasting. I realized that this is my true ikigai.
The Japanese concept.
For the sake of curiosity.
Yeah.
Because you come face to face with death, you see human bodies burning. If you actually view a human body burning, at some point the skull explodes. So when you see that happening in front of you, it shifts something inside. And I feel, again, India is definitely not for everyone, but it is for seekers.
I mean, if you could keep your death in front of you at all times, you would live a magical life. Then you would value the exact moment as as being the complete and wholesome and only real sacred thing that exists.
Do you keep your death in front of you?
I try to. It doesn't always work, but I do. It's probably the most liberating thing that I do. I don't do it as an exercise. But it is on my mind a lot.
What's an ideal death for you?
It doesn't matter. Hopefully not slowly or painfully, but it's when it's gone, it's gone. I guess the ideal would be good to have self-realized before that. Ultimate truth. It would be good. I don't know if there's such a thing. Enlightenment is not something you necessarily, from what I can tell, it's not something you necessarily find or create. It's more just unlearning. It's a shedding. It's what remains when everything else is gone. So it is a mini death of its own sort. It is a death of the separate self in the mind. And I'm not looking for that kind of death, but I would say I'm looking for truth. And if that's true, then I'll take the truth. I'll take an unhappy truth over a lie any day. And I don't think it's an unhappy truth anyway, but it doesn't matter. I'm open to whatever the truth is. If the truth is I'm just a brain in a vat, there's a simulation, and someone's prodding and poking at me, and they're going to torture me for eternity, fine. Show me the truth. I'd rather know the truth.
In the Joe Rogan episode, you spoke about how you used to meditate.
Yeah.
And you would just view your own thoughts. You'd sit in a place and just view your own thoughts.
Yeah.
And through that process, sometimes you reach stillness, but you also had some psychedelic experiences.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about those?
I kind of got bored of it, I don't think experiences are the thing.
They're the distractions.
Yes, any experience that comes will also go. The thing that matters is what your state of mind is. At 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon when you're sitting by yourself, how do you feel? Are you peaceful? Are you happy? Are you good? 2:37 p.m. You're walking down the street. Are you okay? How do you feel? Are you good? That's what matters, right? It's the exact moment in time. What is your internal state? What is your external state? What are the thoughts that are going through your head, if any? That's what matters. So I don't want bliss for an hour a day. That's just another experience that comes and goes. I want something that's indestructible.
Did you ever smoke weed?
I live in California.
When you were younger?
No. Luckily, that's the kind of thing that if I discovered in my youth, I don't think I would have had a very productive youth.
Because you get too into it?
Yeah, it's too easy to turn off your brain. I think things like weed, the West is going through a very hedonistic phase where it's all about being single and partying and doing drugs, and those are hard things to resist. They can really destroy your sense of self-being. I've definitely seen people who have done way too many, even like, say, for example, the common belief now is that like mushrooms are harmless, right? They're not. I mean, you do enough of that stuff, it'll break your brain. You'll end up believing too many things that aren't real. Same thing with weed, it'll rob you of ambition because it's a very feminizing drug. It's a plant estrogen. So you're just going to sit there all day and smoke weed. You're not going to go do anything with your life. So yes, there are definitely things that I have tried, but luckily I would say I'm not getting sucked into any of them.
I mean, even water and stuff like that.
Sure, well that one we're pretty well evolved for, right? It's just like, for example, if you, just from an evolutionary past, if you had access to like easy weed all the time, you had gotten eaten by something. Right? You wouldn't have made it very far. It's just in modern society, yeah, we can do that. Modern society is where we've changed our physical environment much faster than we're adapted for. So we do need all kinds of coping mechanisms, right? For example, we're all overfed, we're under-exercised, we're overstimulated. Our minds are worrying about faraway things, right? The media, the purpose of the media, as I've joked before, is to make every problem your problem, right? You go on social media, and it's just all dueling meme viruses, each one trying to occupy a slot in your brain to make you care. Well, 1,000 years ago, someone could have gotten shot or blown up in some faraway country. You would have never heard about it. You had no stake in it. You had no way of knowing about it. Now it's just your brain is not designed to handle all the world's emergencies in real time as they break. It's breaking your brain at some deep level. You're not even meant to see violence or pornography. Like those are very weird and rare and unique new things. And so the modern struggle is to navigate through the fruits of abundance that are wrecking you. Right? It's actually the challenge of modernity is avoiding the fruits of modernity, right? You have to become almost a yogi in self-defense to protect yourself.
It's called vairagya in our culture. It means being in the middle of a party and seeing every party around you and being happy for them, but not taking part in the party yourself, other than just keeping your mind there.
Yeah, this is why I'm finding it harder and harder to go to parties. Because it's hard not to get involved and to indulge, but it's so meaningless. It's just another game, right? And they're fun, and occasionally I do go to parties, and I do like a good party, and you have a higher odds of dragging me out to a good party than to like some tedious meeting. But all that said, like even parties have kind of lost their luster.
What's Nawal Ravikant like when he's drunk or high?
Same but more talkative.
More talkative?
More talkative, yeah.
Because you're inherently a bit of an introvert?
Yes, yeah. On a podcast I'm not, but left to my own devices, I'm very much an introvert. I would much rather read or be on the internet or just be walking around thinking or listening to a YouTube or a podcast or something than hanging out with people.
Do you miss your childhood?
No, but I don't really think about it. I don't think about the past much.
Consciously?
Yeah, when you're asking me the question, I'm being forced to think about it for the first time in a long time.
Right.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying I don't think about it. So I don't have a pre-digested answer for you.
That's great.
Yeah, no, but I would say no. I don't miss my childhood. It's like a dream. Is it real? Did it actually happen?
Wow. There's a quote that goes like, "The past is fiction."
It is fiction. The past is it is a narrative. You don't remember most of it. The little bit that you do remember is very selective memory stitched into a narrative. There's no point in really remembering it. Presumably there are lessons to learn, but you probably already digested those and learned them. You don't even think about those. So what's the point?
Do you think the future at all?
I think about the future for practical things. Well, like if I have to make money or investment, or if I have to figure out what to do with this child or this problem and solve that, or build a dinner. So yeah, in that sense, we are future planners. But I don't think too far ahead. I don't obsess over it. But I'm more of a future creature than a past creature for sure. In an ideal world, I wouldn't think that much about the future either. But I'm not there.
You were forced to.
You have to. I mean, you're a functioning creature that has to navigate the world. But I want to think about the future as regards to utilitarian things. Food, money, those kinds of things, problem solving. I don't want to think about the future in the sense of what does it hold for me. Like, am I going to be happy? Am I going to be in a good relationship? Am I going to die? Like, the death thing is interesting to think about. You kind of can't look away. It's like the most important thing that's going to happen to you, right? So you have to think about it. But I don't want to think about. I don't want to self-obsess in the future. The reason I don't self-obsess anymore, or never even got that into it, is because I just found it both a waste of time, as well as it was just destroying my happiness. Happiness is a big word, so more peace. I was intruding on my peace.
I think we're almost at the end of the episode. What advice do you have for me?
I don't have advice for you.
I mean, you must have gotten to know something about me at this point. Or maybe I'll ask you the career advice aspect, because I could reframe this question as, how do you view the world of content creators going into the future?
I'll give you some advice. I like being provocative. So let's say be selfish. Be more selfish. Make sure you really enjoy your work. Make sure you really are only working with the people that you really like doing and like working with. Make sure you are only have the guests on that you're proud to have on, that you genuinely want to have conversations with. Because I think the value, you already built something of incredible value, and it's going to continue compounding. So the value now is about the longevity. How long can you keep it going? Whether you go to episode 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 matters more than you don't really grind your way. If you're just grinding, you're gonna burn out, and the day you burn out, this thing is over. So I would say just make sure you enjoy yourself, and so that's part of it. So be selfish and make sure you enjoy yourself. And then the second part of being selfish is talk to people where you genuinely want to talk to them. Don't just record a podcast because you have to make certain amount of money or you have to check a box, because you'll be judged at the end of the day by your best work, not by your average. All my content that is out there that people like, I didn't do it for them. I didn't do it for anything. I didn't do it for anyone. I just did it for me, and it was deeply selfish. It was just notes to self, and there's nothing wrong with that because we're all the same inside. So if you're creating art, then you do it for its own sake. You do it because you enjoy it, and then other people will see the same thing that you saw in it, and they'll get value out of it. So it's just be selfish, and you can sustain it.
Okay, now I will take the layers off. I'll take the filters off and tell you that this was one of the biggest days of my podcasting career.
Thank you. You're very nice.
You have helped me so much from a professional perspective, being on the other side of the world and just speaking on other podcasts. And there's so many people like me who just sit in different parts of this world and consume pieces of your mind through Twitter, through the stuff you say on podcasts. And I know you're very nonchalant about it, like you're just enjoying it, but you're adding so much value to our lives. And so many of us have daddy issues and mommy issues. And I think Nawal Ravikant has become kind of a big brother figure to people all over the globe. And to just be able to share screen space with you is one of the biggest honors of my life.
And at the same time, the worst thing I could do for myself is get into the idea of having a fan base, because fame is a beast. It'll eat you alive. And I don't want to do anything for other people. I don't care about if they respect me or not. Disrespect all day long. Who cares?
I mean, I hear you.
Yeah.
And just observing you go about how you handle things. We were together at an event right now. It's taught me a lot. Just sharing
I don't think I handle it well. I get approached by a lot of people. They want to take a photo. It always kind of weirds me out a little bit. No, it's just, it'd be better not to be famous, to be honest. If I should do it over again, it might be better to be anonymous. Yeah.
Thank God you're not anonymous. But Nawal, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, I bow down to you.
No, don't no vows.
Really?
That's embarrassing. Peer relationships only.
I hear you, but
No vows, no gurus. Anybody calls me you want to not be my friend? Call me a guru.
no, you're
not going to be friends.
I don't think you're a guru, but you are a bit of a bhaiya. You know what bhaiya means?
Brother, yeah.
Big brother.
Yeah.
So that's what I look at you as, and that's how a lot of brown people look at you as.
Okay,
as well.
great. We're all brothers. That works.
It's some people who just emit that sensei energy, and it's not their will. Again, it's the universe working for you. That's how I look at you. So thank you for everything you've given all of us. You're giving a lot of young people, and you're helping everyone to get mental and spiritual health without knowing it.
Thank you. You're very kind. I know you 800 episodes, and you're obviously seeking bigger and bigger truths. So you're on a good path.
Thank you.
Thank
So,
you.
I hope we get to speak again in life, and I hope you had a very nice time.
Thank you. I did. Thanks for having me.
That was the episode. Was not easy to make this particular episode happen. I had to fly to Singapore, which is a 5-hour flight away from Mumbai. Of course, now I flew from halfway across the way. Our common friend Balaji told me that there is this opportunity and Nawal's agreed to do this particular episode. So this was the first ever episode we shot on foreign soil. In my eyes, it's the first international episode on TRS. Even though we've shot one with Arnold Schwarzenegger in Korea, we shot an episode with Ronnie Coleman in India, we shot an episode with Braun Strowman in India, countless foreign cricketers. But I truly feel like my international phase of this podcasting journey begins with this very important and very iconic episode of the Ranveer Show. Couldn't sleep on the night of this episode because this was a very important life moment for me. It's something I've visualized for a very long time before we executed upon this podcast. Dream come true. For anyone who's been listening to podcasts for the last decade, we all know what a big deal Nawal Ravikant is. I'm just glad I got to do this very easygoing conversation with him, and I hope that he returns on the Ranveer Show at some point in the future. I will be attaching all his social handles down below. For those of you who are being introduced to him for the first time, please go follow Nawal Ravikant on every social media platform. I also urge you to pick up snippets from this conversation and turn them into reels and shorts for social media. Thank you for listening in. TRS and the whole team will be back very, very soon.
At this altitude, I can run flat out for a half mile before my hands start shaking.
This episode is brought to you by 99 Designs, your one-stop shop for all things graphic design related. I've used 99 Designs for everything from banner ads to book covers, including sketches and mock-ups that led to The 4-Hour Body, which later became #1 New York Times, #1 Wall Street Journal. And the brainstorming, a lot of it took place with designers from around the world. Here's how it works. Whether you need a t-shirt, a business card, a website, an app thumbnail, whatever it might be, you submit that project, and designers from around the world will send you sketches and mock-ups and designs. You choose your favorite, and you have an original that you love, or you get your money back. It's that straightforward. And many of you who are listening have already used it and created some amazing things that I'll be sharing in the future. But in the meantime, if you want to see some of my competitions, some of the book covers, as well as get a free $99 upgrade, go to 99designs.com/Tim. That's 99designs.com/Tim. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I get asked all the time, if you could only use one supplement, what would it be? And my answer is inevitably Athletic Greens. It is your all-in-one nutritional insurance. I recommended it in the 4-Hour Body, did not get paid for that, and I travel with it to avoid getting sick. I take it in the mornings to ensure optimal performance. It just covers all my bases if I can't get what I need through whole food meals throughout the rest of the day. And you can get 50% off. Yes, 50% off if you go to athleticgreens.com/Tim. That's athleticgreens.com/Tim. Check it out. It's tasty, but more important, it will help you not screw up when you're doing your nutritional planning. So for me, just covers the bases, takes a load off my mind, puts a lot in my body, and check it out, athleticgreens.com/Tim. Hello, my frisky little kittens. This is Tim Ferriss, and welcome to another episode of The Tim Ferriss Show, where it is my job to deconstruct world-class performers, to tease out routines, the habits, the influences, such as favorite books and so on, that have made them good at what they do. And the intention, of course, is to unearth the things that you can borrow, that you can replicate in your own life ASAP. And the guests range from chess prodigies to hedge fund managers to celebs to fill in the blank. And this time we have fill in the blank, which is a world-class entrepreneur, builder, and investor. His name is Naval Ravikant. Naval is the CEO and co-founder of AngelList. He is a close friend, has become an even closer friend because I am now an advisor to AngelList. He previously co-founded ePinions, which went public as part of Shopping.com and Fast.com also. He is a very active angel investor, not surprisingly, and has invested in more than 100 companies, including more than a handful of unicorn, so-called unicorn mega, I'll just say that again, mega successes. His deals include Twitter, Uber, Yammer, Postmates, Wish, Thumbtack, and OpenDNS, which Cisco just bought for $635 million in cash. There are many more, and you can find many examples on his AngelList page, which is just angel.co/Naval. If you want to see mine, it is angel.co/Tim. And AngelList is one of the most incredible tools for investing, matching opportunities and investors that I've ever seen. And it's very, very disruptive to the venture capital space. There were, I think, around 10 people who were introduced to Uber way back in the day as investors and given the opportunity on AngelList. This was around 2010. I have led a couple of deals, including Ship, SHYP, you can check them out, ship.com, which is, I think, around 40x up in its valuation from the first time that I put it on AngelList and made it available to people like yourselves who are accredited investors. So you can check out all of my startup deals at angel.co/Tim. But let's talk about Naval and why he's on the podcast. Naval's on the podcast because he is a very deep thinker who is very good at asking questions and testing, in other words, questioning the obvious. And that practice and the practice of being hyper-rational when other people are emotional has allowed him to be very successful in the world of investing. But it translates to many other sectors of life and business, and that is why, even if you have no interest in early-stage investing, I highly, highly encourage you to listen to this. Much like the Chris Sacca episode, Naval's had a huge impact on my own thinking about the world and startups and investing, but not only money, my time, my energy, and he's been very much a mentor in that capacity and many others. So I hope that my enthusiasm and enjoyment in this interview translates to the same for you. He is a treasure trove of many recommendations, and you will probably take down a lot of notes, but you can find the links to the books and so on in the show notes. And the show notes are at 4hourworkweek.com/podcast, all spelled out, 4hourworkweek.com/podcast. And without further ado, please enjoy Naval Ravikant. Naval, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
I have really been looking forward to this because I always enjoy sitting down in this somewhat artificial, formal setting to talk with close friends because it gives me the opportunity to do something that would never work in, say, dinner or sitting down, which is basically have a unidirectional Charlie Rose experience of lobbing questions at you. So I'm actually pretty stoked to jump into it. The first thing that I wanted to ask is, I suppose, a pretty basic one, but when people ask you, what do you do, how do you answer that?
Oh, very poorly. If fundamentally at heart I'm an entrepreneur, and any day in which I solve the same problem twice in a row, I'm pretty unhappy. So by definition, I like to do something different every day, and I think all humans are sort of meant to do that kind of thing. The idea that we repeat ourselves and we specialize and we pigeonhole ourselves is a modern invention created through specialization of labor in the Industrial Revolution. And hopefully, as more and more people move up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're going to be able to define ourselves much more loosely. So that's a good way of dodging your question. Now let me actually answer it. My day job is I am co-founder and CEO of AngelList, which is kind of the world's largest platform for online fundraising and recruiting for startups. We're bringing venture capital online. We have lots of great lead investors, essentially mini micro venture capitalists who can do deals on the platform and allows anyone who is sufficiently wealthy and sophisticated to invest behind them. And we also run a large marketplace for introducing talent to startups, where we have over 10,000 companies recruiting now. We have hundreds of thousands of candidates who are looking to join great startups, and we're making over 10,000 introductions, mutual introductions every single week between candidates and startups. So that's kind of my day job. But the reality of what I do on a day-to-day basis is just completely different.
Now, so no, I wanted to talk about two seemingly opposed, maybe they're complementary characteristics of yours that I've observed. The first I thought I'd introduce just via a story. So we have a mutual friend who's a salty old Polish trainer who I won't mention by name, and you actually introduced me to him. He does a lot of incredible Olympic lifting, and he is one of the most aggressive, intense human beings I've ever met in my life. And of all of the people that he and I know mutually, he's like, Navon, that guy is intense. That guy is intense. So why does he have that opinion of you? And do you agree with it? What is that?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I think at my core level, I am an extremely intense person, very competitive. I have this huge drive to win. I always want to be right. I usually research the hell out of any topic I get into and learn 80% of it very quickly. And I take nothing at face value. So I'm always kind of questioning and deciding. And when I first met this gentleman who, just like you, he's transformed my life, actually. He made me healthier, fitter than I've ever been. And I consider him incredibly intense. I pushed back on him. I mean, there were things that he said that I thought were smart, that I could corroborate, that I took as he had handed them, and there were things that he had said that contradicted my own experience of being, and so I dismissed them. So I think he might refer to me as being intense because I have my own point of view on everything, or everything that matters. That said, I probably spent the last half decade of my life, like all of us who are getting a little older, being much more introspective, much more aware of my own foibles, and trying to be a much calmer person. And trying to be less stressed and more happy and more in the moment. And part of that means learning how to control the intensity, dial it up and dial it down. And that's a contradiction that we all deal with, that we all want to be successful people, but we also want to be happy people. And the two of those run in almost diametric opposites to each other. And if you look at all the new wisdom is if you walk into an airport bookstore, you open up Time magazine, it's all about, be like Elon Musk or Larry Page, it's all about success, success, success. And because we live in this mythology of anyone can achieve the American dream, if you're not successful, if you're not Tim Ferriss, you're a loser. And that's terrible.
Or if you're Tim Ferriss and you're not Elon Musk, you're also a loser, right?
You're also a loser. That's right. There's always someone higher up the stack. So the success-driven mentality drives you to unhappiness. And if you want to be successful, surround yourself with people who are more successful than you are. But if you want to be happy, surround yourself with people who are less successful than you are. So this is the contradiction that we deal with all day long, because we're also told that the American dream will bring you happiness, and it will not. I think a lot of us learn as we get older that happiness is internal. Happiness is a choice that you make and a skill that you develop. And so how do you do that? And that's the fundamental contradiction. And that's why our mutual friend can consider me incredibly intense. And by the way, I hope you'll have him on the show someday, because I think he has incredible wisdom to pass along. So that's where the intensity comes in, the desire to be successful, and at the same time, the non-intensity comes in, which is the desire to be happy.
So let's call him Victor. We'll just call him Victor. So right. Victor, what I expect would likely happen if I had Victor on this podcast is he would just spend 60 minutes berating me and telling everyone how fat I was and uncoordinated. I think it would be very hard to steer him away from the beat Tim with a leather whip routine. But yeah, he's a fascinating guy, so I'll have him on at some point. The intensity, I'd love to ask just some follow-ups about that, because your brother Kamal is a great friend as well of mine, and seems very different, right? He seems almost the sort of yin to your yang. Wrote a great book called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. Where did your intensity come from? I mean, have you always been that way? Why do you think you have that intensity, which, not to say Kamal lacks, but to a much lesser degree, of course?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I mean, the genetics and evolution are a powerful thing. And you could just say at some base variation level, both of us were hit with similar adversities in life, and our genes chose to respond very differently to see who would adapt their way out of the situation. So at the core level, we are very different. Um, we had a tough childhood growing up, make no secret of that, and we just responded in different ways. For me, it was all about winning and having this strong desire to win. I started out as a bookworm, and then I had to transition into sort of being a combatant in the field of business, if you will, and now I'm sort of making my transition back into being a bookworm. Uh, I think everyone gets shaped very, very early on in life. You're probably baked in terms of your core personality by the time you're 12 or 13. You hit puberty, it's a jarring thing. You sort of emerge into the world, you become an adult, you construct your ego, you go out there to fight your fights, to do your things, to become who you want to be. And then at some point, you get to where you are, where you want to be up close enough, and you start realizing, wait, it's not about external world, it's not about external accomplishment. I have to work on myself. And I think my brother Kamal has gotten to that point as well. And then you sort of start working on the inner being. So I'm not sure I answered your question about where it comes from, but I think we all get shaped by adversity. Every great thing that I've ever done or accomplished, according to external metrics, or even when I look internally, all the great things that have happened to me in my life that I consider highly positive, they all started with something highly negative.
What made your childhood difficult? Or what were aspects
We,
of it that
we
made it
were
challenging?
we were immigrants, so we came to this country when I was 9. My brother was 11. We had very little. My mother raised us as a single mom in a studio apartment.
Where did you come from?
From India, and yeah, she worked a menial job by day, and then she went to school at night. So we were latchkey kids, sort of left to develop and learn on our own. And a lot of growing up was watching the ideal American lifestyle, but sort of from the other side of the window pane with my nose pressed against the glass and saying, yeah, I want that too, and I want that for myself and my kids. So I grew up with a very dark view of the world on the other side of the tracks, and then kind of had to cross over and start trying to fit into this amazing life that is available to most, but not all Americans.
And which part of India did your mother come from or bring you from, and then where did you grow up in the US at that
So
point?
we came from Delhi, which is the capital of India, and here we landed in Queens, New York, and we grew up in Queens Village in Jamaica, Kew Gardens, Wimbledon, and a lot. We probably lived in 9 or 10 different places in the course of 9 years.
And you mentioned combatant. I think that you're a very, very good strategist and combatant when need be. And coming back to the intensity, I never thought of it this way, but you never hesitate to say what's on your mind. And so I could see how that would be interpreted by a lot of people who are used to sort of polite, nod, nod conversation. I remember when you and I were both invited to a dinner, and there were a lot of people, neither of us had ever met before, around, and we were standing in a group of a couple of people, and I walked up, and I had a pretty unusual look. I had this like turquoise long sleeve shirt that I wore. I don't know if you remember this. And then these like brown, unusual looking dress shoes, kind of look like bowler shoes, and you were like, wow, you look like a gay beggar. And then this woman that neither of us had ever met started defending me, and I was like, oh god, here we go.
Yeah, the honesty thing is a core foundational value, right?
Now,
So
in fairness, I totally did.
yeah. Well, and I think so I have a couple of core foundational values, and they're not things that I explicitly developed. They're just sort of, you can look back after the fact and say, oh yeah, I won't compromise on those things. But now I realize how important honesty is, and I learned that from a couple of different places. One is when I grew up, I wanted to be a physicist, and I idolized Richard Feynman. I read everything by him, technical and non-technical, that I could get my hands on. And he said, you must never ever fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. So the physics grounding is very important, because physics, you have to speak truth. You don't compromise, you don't negotiate with people, you don't try to make them feel better, because if your equation is wrong, it just won't work, whatever you're doing. So I think the science background is important in that. A second is growing up in New York, I grew up around some really rough and tumble kids, some of whom were actually the Russian mob. And I once had an encounter where I watched one of them threaten to kill the other, and the one the would-be victim, went and hid, and then finally he let the aggressor into his house after the aggressor promised him, no, I'm not going to kill you. Their honesty was such a strong virtue between them that even when they were ready to kill each other, they would take each other's word for things. It sort of went over harmony, even though it was honesty in a lot of contexts. I realized how important that is in relationships. And then as I get older in life, I realized that a lot of happiness is just being present. And whether you get this out of Buddhism or cognitive therapy or drugs or wherever, you realize that to live in the present moment is the highest calling. It's the source of all happiness. And when you're not honest with somebody else, or when you withhold something in your mind, what you're you've done is you've created a second thought process, you've created a second thread in your head that then has to stay active, keeping track of what you've said versus what you're really thinking. And that takes you out of the moment, and it brings you unhappiness over time. You will not realize it at that moment itself, but it will create stress and distraction. So if you really want to be happy, you have to be present. And one of the core tenets of being present is to be completely honest at all times.
There is a great short film that had a huge impact on me on this topic called Lying by Sam Harris, which was just phenomenal because it explored the impact not just of lying in the way that most people think of it, but generalized deceit or even white lies that are intended to protect people. And just come back to Feynman also. Feynman is a character and a thinker who I've long idolized in many ways. Surely You Must Be Joking, Mr. Feynman is one of my favorite books, and even for non-technical people, I think he's someone worth exploring. And if you're not the reading type, you can just search for a video. I think it was done on Nova ages ago called "The Joy of Finding Things Out," which it gives you such a taste of Feynman and the way that he not only questioned the so-called obvious or best practices, but also explored being a polymath, right? I mean, even though he was a world-class physicist, he was also an amateur safecracker and artist, musician, another place. Really fascinating guy. It seems like you have scratched your own itch in a lot of respects, right? With whether it was venture hacks, that you had pain point, and you wanted to help other people understand what can be a very opaque black box, which is venture capital and so on. And so you provided these how-to articles and so on that you would have liked to have had, right? It seems like AngelList. Does AngelList serve a similar function? I mean, how did AngelList come about?
Yeah, so it's exactly that, which is basically self-actualizing, creating the product that you want. So the initial problem was entrepreneurs go out and raise money. It's a complete black box. Nobody knows what to do. They do the most important negotiation of their life, which is the initial term sheet or initial deal with a venture capitalist, and they have no information. So they need that information. Boy, I wish I'd had that information, and that's where venture hacks came from. And then AngelList was, well, okay, that's how you negotiate a term sheet. How do I get a term sheet? How do I find investors in the first place? For that, we built a product. And then a few years into AngelList development, it became very clear the biggest problem in this environment is not how do I raise capital, it's how do I get help building my business, how do I find great individuals to help me, and how do I recruit great talent. So we created both our syndicates product, where you, of course, are one of our top leaders who invest in companies, as well as we created our jobs product, which helps companies find great engineers. At the end of the day, we stand for founders, we stand for underdogs. And, it's funny, you asked at the beginning, how do I describe what I do? I said I'm an entrepreneur. And in the back of my mind, what AngelList does is it helps founders fund other founders. And on the recruiting side, it helps founders recruit and find other founders. And in fact, when I looked inside AngelList itself, the company is only 30 people. Almost everyone in the company is a former founder or wants to be a future founder and is getting their training wheels on at AngelList and is going to go start a great company. And we've had former engineers from us go and start companies like Instacart, Hover, and many more will come out of it. So at the end of the day, to me, it's all about founders, it's all about individuals, it's all about the underdog. And I think long term, on a long enough time scale, maybe it's 50 years from now, maybe it's 500 years from now, but almost everybody on this planet will work for themselves. The information revolution is reversing the industrial revolution. What the industrial age did was it allowed human beings to team up in mechanistic, organized, hierarchical ways to create faster ease in production. And I think the information revolution is breaking down the communication barriers. It's saying the optimal size of the firm is shrinking from thousands to hundreds to dozens, maybe even to one at some point. And eventually, every morning, someone will wake up, or every week you will wake up, and on your phone or whatever the devices of the future, you will get an alert with a various bunch of jobs and contracts that you can choose from. You will look at them, you'll pick out which ones you like based on your social connections and how much they're offering you, how much you can build your profile, your future work, and you'll do that work, and then you'll be ranked on it, you'll be rated on it, and then if you want to take the next week off, you'll take the next week off. If you want to do 2 jobs at a time, you do 2 jobs at a time. But in the future, it's all headed towards individual brands. You can see how reporters on the New York Times now, they build individual brands on Twitter that far exceed the brand that they would build just on the New York Times. You yourself, you're an individual brand. There is nothing else other than Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss doesn't work for CNN. Tim Ferriss doesn't work for Apple. Doesn't work for New York Times. You're an independent brand, and you're an independent actor. And I think the entire world is headed that way. And so to me, I was lucky enough to be a founder early, but I figured out how hard it is. What are the parts of it that work, the parts of it that don't? And for now, what makes me happy is to work on a platform that creates more founders and helps those founders. Because I think at the end of the day, we're all founders. We're all meant to work for ourselves. We're meant to be individuals. We're not meant to follow. We're not meant to be in hierarchies. We're not meant to go to 9 to 5 jobs where we're told what to do over and over. And the sooner we get off the grid and self-actualize and become free, the better off all of humanity is.
Now, I think that people could also look at being a founder as just being a creator, right? And I think there's
Yes.
in my mind at least, the misconception find yourself. Whereas I think that a more constructive way, or actionable way of looking at it is creating yourself, right? Day by day, habit by habit, decision by decision. some needle in a haystack that you have to go into the jungle and take drugs to find, although that's a separate conversation. Let's talk about founders for a second, but in the startup context.
Mhm.
One of the more common questions that people ask successful VCs or investors is, what do you look for in a founder? So I'm just going to ask you that. Like, what are the things that you look for in founders, or the red flags that disqualify an investment or a founder?
Yeah. So number one, intelligence. You got to be smart, which means you have to know what you're doing to some level, and that's a fuzzy thing. But you talk to people, and you kind of get a sense of do they know what they're doing or not? Do they have insight? Do they have specific knowledge? Have they thought about this problem deeply? It's not about the age. It's not how many years they've spent, but just how deep is their understanding of what they're about to do. So intelligence is key. Energy, because being a founder is brutally difficult. It takes a long time, and in the long run, the people who succeed are just the ones who persevere. So if someone runs out of energy, or if they're doing this in some hesitating preliminary way where they're looking for constant positive feedback, or if they're easily thrown off course, then they're not going to make it to the end, especially in the highly competitive startup context. And then finally is integrity, because if you have someone who's high intelligence and high energy, but they're low integrity, what you've got is a hardworking, smart crook. And especially in the startup world, things are very dynamic, they're very fast-moving, people are very independent, so if somebody wants to screw you over, they will find a way to do it. And fundamentally, ethics and integrity are what you do despite the money. If being ethical was profitable, everybody would do it. So what you're looking for is a core sense of values that rises above and beyond the pure financial incentives. So for example, if I'm talking to a founder and they offer to do something that's slightly unfair to another shareholder or employee or founder in exchange for making me happy, that's a red flag. Because if they can do it to them, they can do it to me.
For sure.
And integrity is the hardest one to figure out because it requires longitudinal relationships.
Meaning
And
long-term.
Exactly. So I've just become more hyper aware of that piece as time goes on. But those are kind of the three things that I look for. And then I would just say, a thing that isn't really about success, but it's more just about personal time is when you invest in somebody or you work with somebody, you start a company with somebody, you're signing up to spend the next decade of your life having them in your life.
Right.
And so you just have to make sure you actually genuinely like these people. You don't consider it work to have to answer a phone call or take a meeting or spend time with them. If it's exhausting, if they're downers, they're negative, if they're difficult, no amount of money is worth it. You and I will both die with money in the bank. And so it's not about money at this point. It's about do I want to spend my scarce time, resources, mental energy, spirit interacting with these people. My favorite founders are actually the ones who I learned from. So every time they call me up because they need help with something, I jump on it because I know that walking around the block with them for an hour, I'm going to walk out much smarter.
Who are some that come to mind just offhand? Recognizing that there are many others you could name.
Oh, there are tons. But just to give you a very recent example, there are these two basically kids, Corey and Michael, who started this company called One, which now runs a product called After School. And they're young. I think Corey was 19 when they started the company. He might have been 17.
How do you spell One?
Just O-N-E. That was the name of the company, but they have different products. And Michael Callahan is his co-founder. And these guys are just brilliant. They're young, they're kids, but the level at which they think about the depth of it that they put into social products is absolutely mind-blowing. Another one is Ryan Breslow. I recently invested in his company. He started a company called Bolt, which does stuff in the financial payment space. This founder has assembled a crack team of engineers out of Square and Twitter and Stripe, and he's done very little so far. He's a very young guy. And then when I asked to invest in his company, or I was getting to know him, he reference checked the heck out of me, every step of the way. Very professional, very quick, very thorough. But he did more diligence on me than I did on him.
How did he do that without being a pain in the ass to people you know? Because I know people, for instance, they're entrepreneurs, I shall not name, who try to pitch me and they have like 30 people. They just bombard 30 of my friends to try to get to me, and it's a complete turnoff if they're just using brute force. How did he do it the right way?
It wasn't a brute force. He asked me for references. He also did his own back channel. He was very quick. He was very transparent. And then he actually compiled the feedback he had gotten on me and gave it to me.
Oh, wow.
As if he had done a peer review of me and he thought I should have the data. And I was so blown away by his professionalism, especially for such a young person. He's just probably 1 or 2 years out of school, maybe a little bit more. So it's just certain people, certain entrepreneurs, you get the feeling they really care about what they're putting together. Every early move that they make, they consider it as they're putting bricks in the foundation of a skyscraper that they're going to build. And you can see that right away. A founder who comes barreling in, decides very quickly, treats it like a flip, says, well, if I get a good offer, I'll sell this thing, or I'll do whatever's pragmatic to make money. Those founders are not in it for the long haul. And you learn very quickly that all the returns in this business are made with the huge, huge outcomes, at least for an investor. And so you start becoming hypersensitive to these founders who actually apply care and are very meticulous about how they go about things.
Yeah, I haven't had, and granted you've been in, how many individual and fund-based investments have you made to date, would you say, if you had to guess?
I lost track. It's probably north of 150.
Yeah. you have a lot more experience than I do, of course, but I haven't had, I don't think, a single good outcome from any company led by a founder who's like, well, if the wind blows this way, then this. If the wind blows that way, then that. They've always had a very clear vision of some type or some type of true north.
That's right. Yeah, in this industry, you get paid for being right when everybody else is wrong. So unfortunately, that means a lot of them run full speed and crash into a wall, which is painful. But they'll get up and they'll run again at something else. But you get paid for being right when everybody else is wrong. So if you're looking for how to operate based on what everybody else around you thinks, then you probably don't have what it takes. That said, these people are also very hard to separate from delusional, crazy people.
Right.
Because those people are completely mad. They're not paying any attention to the feedback from the environment. They're not dealing with reality. They're living inside their own fantasy. So it's very hard to tell a madman apart from a genius in this environment.
Give me an idea for a reality show. You could go out and like gather people from asylums or homeless people in SF who are very vocal and give them like a 10-minute training session and then unleash them on like VCs to see what the actual success rate would be. I mean, I bet the confidence would take them a long way. There are a lot of venture capitalists and angel investors flooding the current environment. What are some of the old wives' tales or things that are repeated so often that a lot of people believe they're true that are completely false in your mind or dangerous?
Yeah, so I think the hardest thing in this business is that the great new companies always look really strange. They don't look very much like the previous companies. So you can get very easily tracked into believing that there's a certain way of doing things, and then you'll find huge exceptions down the road, which will cost you dearly. So, for example, before Netscape came along back in the mid-90s, it was believed that there wasn't much money to be made in internet or internet-type products. Before Microsoft came along, it was believed that the money was in hardware, not in software. Before Apple and a few other computer companies came along, it was believed the money was in mainframes and enterprise and not in consumer. Before Uber came along, it was believed the money was in all virtual and software and not in handling real-world things like taxi dispatchers and dealing with unions and those kinds of things. So the conventional wisdom is always wrong. And so as an investor, if you have a failed investment in one space, the worst thing you can do is write off that space and not make an investment again. For example, Sequoia Capital is one of the best investors on the planet. They were investors in Webvan, which was the failed grocery delivery service in the late 90s that blew up very badly.
They skipped Instacart, or what did they?
They did Instacart.
They did Instacart.
That is what makes Sequoia so great. That they saw their own blow up. They lost a lot of money. They had egg on their face. They didn't care. They actually reevaluate every opportunity on its own merits, and they know that a lot of these things are about timing. It might have been the right idea at the wrong time, and they also know that each great business looks weird, and there's no such thing as a perfect deal. So there are lots and lots of venture capitalists who miss out on the great companies because they're looking for the perfect deal, and there is no such thing. So I think that anything that becomes conventional wisdom in this business gets blown up. For example, one of the pieces of conventional wisdom is, don't invest in married couples because if they get divorced, the company blows up. That said, if you follow that advice, you would have missed Cisco, and you would have missed a bunch of other amazing companies that were founded by couples.
Eventbrite too, right?
Eventbrite as well. Yeah, there's a long list. The classic mythology is you should have a two-founder company. But there have been plenty of great one-founder companies. There have been plenty of great three-founder companies.
Wasn't Drew of Dropbox? Wasn't he a single founder?
No,
he didn't.
Yeah, he recruited a co-founder very quickly. But especially in the enterprise space, Oracle and Salesforce have been single-founder companies. And even the dual-founder companies, you find that over time, one of the founders leaves and the other one dominates. So in the Jobs and Wozniak case in Apple, Jobs dominated. Same thing in Microsoft, where Gates took over and Allen sort of went by the wayside. So it's not enough to say that it has to be two founders. So any formula you lay out is a set of guidelines that is probably going to be wrong. And so you have to actually, this is very difficult, but when you meet with a new company, you have to forget everything you know.
Yeah,
and you have to shut up and listen.
The Instacart example of Sequoia is really impressive to me. Now, I don't know if it were if it was handled by the same partners, so who knows? I have no idea. But the nature of cognitive biases and, for instance, anchoring is something I've been thinking a lot about. Where I'm not kind of by disposition or expertise a very good public markets guy, like trading stocks. I make bad decisions. I get emotional, or I peg, for instance, a recent high per share price to a stock, and then I've made this mistake where I'm like, well, when it gets up to X, then I'll sell. But generally speaking, not a smart idea, right? Because you sort of pegged and anchored this point that just has no basis. The stock doesn't. You can't train the stock like I'm trying to train my puppy who's sitting next to me chewing on Maribon. Like, it doesn't work that way. What books or people outside of the startup world have most improved your ability to invest, and maybe broadly speaking, just resource allocate?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. It's a very deep question that's going to have lots of answers. But at the end of the day, I think you have to work on your internal state until you are free of as many biases and conditioned responses as you can be, and it will improve every aspect of your life, including investing. And I'm a bookworm, so I read an enormous amount. I was raised essentially in a library as a daycare center, and so I've just read so much that I don't know where to start. But if you work on your internal state, one of the things you start realizing is, as an investor, emotions dominate. Investors are very emotional, even though we pretend to be very rational. For example, you'll decide in the first 5 minutes of a meeting, usually, whether you want to invest in the company or not. And if a company doesn't take your money in the first round, you get annoyed with them, or you feel like they crossed you, then you have to undo that emotional state. So when the second round comes along, you can still be a positive force and continue helping the company and maybe have a bite at the apple a second time. And these kinds of skills are extremely hard to build. They're not things you're going to build by reading one book and then you're like, aha. So I don't believe in the epiphany theory of self-development, where you read some book, you have an incredible epiphany, you read one phrase, you're like, okay, that's great, this changes my life, and then you scroll it down a piece of paper and you keep looking at it, or you put it as a backdrop to your computer screen. Life doesn't work that way. What you kind of have to do is you have to build skills. And I think happiness is a skill, nutrition is a skill, diet is a skill, investing is a skill, self-awareness is a skill. And skills get built up over decades with feedback loops, and you just have to constantly keep working on it. So the books that have helped me a lot, I think there's a class of books that I would kind of put in the Stoicism category. And I know you've been a big advocate of these in the past, and I sort of discovered them independently, but they were very influential. So, Seneca and Marcus Aurelius both stand out. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius was absolutely life-changing for me, because it's the personal diary of the Emperor of Rome. And here's a guy who was probably the most powerful human being on earth at the time that he lived, and he was writing his own diary to himself, not expecting it to be published. And when you open this book, you realize he had all the same issues and all the same mental struggles. He was trying to be a better person. And so right there, you figure out, okay, success and power don't improve your internal state. You still have to work on that. And so that class of books is very influential. I like to pay attention to what I consider the rational Buddhists, because a lot of Buddhism is drowned in mysticism and Hinduism and sort of worship this guru or do this ritual. So I don't pay any attention to that. But I pay a lot of attention to what I call rational Buddhists, where they can make the case very intelligently with reasoning along the way as to how you should train your mind to work or how you should observe your mind. Sam Harris, who you mentioned earlier, is great. Jiddu Krishnamurti, who's a lesser well-known guy, but an Indian philosopher who lived during the last century, is extremely influential to me. He's an uncompromising, very direct person who basically tells you to look at your own mind at all times. And so I've been hugely influenced by him. Probably the best book of his that I like is the one called The Book of Life, which is sort of excerpts from his various speeches and books that are stitched together. Oddly enough, Bruce Lee wrote some great philosophy. And Striking Thoughts is a book that's a good summary of some of his philosophy. But I could go on and on and on. I mean, you have to read hundreds of these things, literally. Blogs are, I feel, an underappreciated resource. We're now in a day and age of Twitter and Facebook where we're getting sort of bite-sized, pithy wisdom that's really hard to absorb. And books are very difficult to read as a modern person, because we've been trained. We've got two contradictory pieces of training. One is our attention span has gone through the floor, because we're hit with so much information all the time that we want to skim, summarize, skip. We want to get to the TLDR, cut to the chase, too long, didn't read. What's the 140-character version? What's the Instagram version? On the other hand, we're also taught from a young age that books are something you finish. Books are something that are sacred, that you treat books as when you go to school and you're assigned to read a book, you have to finish the book. So over time, we forget how to read books, or we get this contradiction where everyone I know is stuck on some book. Everyone is stuck on some books. I'm sure you're stuck on some book right now. It's like page 332. You can't go on any further, but you know you should finish the book. So what do? You give up reading books for a while. Your Kindle or your iPad or whatever you use, or even your paper book, is in a stuck state. And that for me was a tragedy, because I grew up on books, and then I switched to blogs, and then I switched to Twitter and Facebook, and then I realized I wasn't actually learning anything. I was just taking in little dopamine snacks all day long. I was getting my little 140-character burst of dopamine, and then I'd retweet, and then I'd see who retweeted my tweet, then I'd get into an argument on Twitter, and it's a fun, wonderful thing, but it's a game that I was playing. I wasn't actually learning anything.
Usually with Startup L. Jackson. It's
yeah, Startup L. Jackson, great character on Twitter. So I realized I had to go back to reading books, because when you're talking about solving old problems, the older the problem, the older the solution. So if you're trying to learn how to drive a car or fly a plane, absolutely, you should read something written in the modern age, because this problem was created in the modern age, the solution is created in the modern age. But if you're talking about an old problem, like how to, generally keep your body healthy, how to stay calm and peaceful of mind, what kinds of value systems are good, how should you raise a family, these kinds of things, the older solutions are probably better. And they withstood the test of time. Any book that survived for 2,000 years has been filtered for a lot of people. Now, it may have some stuff in it that we now know to be true, but the general principles are more likely to be correct. So if I want to learn the theory of evolution, which I kind of use as my binding principle whenever I'm trying to explain any human action, people read all kinds of blog posts and tweets on evolution. Everyone has a loose understanding of how evolution works, but how many have actually read The Origin of Species? And you can get it for $5 on Kindle, and it's a very easy read. It's not a difficult read, and you can read the actual source, and you can see the source of the brilliance, and you can see how Darwin came up with stuff back then that we're still trying to figure out, or statements he made that we're still trying to prove out. But there's very little that's incorrect in that book, and it is a source book. So I wanted to get back into reading these source books. And I knew it was a very hard problem because my brain had now been trained to spend time on Facebook and Twitter and these other bite-sized pieces. So what I did was I came up with this hack where I started treating books as throwaway blog posts or as bite-sized tweets or Facebook posts, and I felt no obligation to finish any book. So now, anytime someone mentions a book to me, I buy it. At any given time, I'm reading somewhere between 10 and 20 books. I'm flipping through them. So I'll skip. If the book is getting a little boring, I'll skip ahead. Sometimes I'll start reading a book in the middle because some paragraph caught my eye, and I'll just continue from there. And I feel no obligation whatsoever to finish the book. If at some point I decide the book is boring, or if it's got pieces of it that are incorrect, so now I can't trust the rest of the information in there, I just delete it. And I don't remember them at all. So I treat books now as other people might treat throwaway light pieces of information on the web, and all of a sudden books are back into my reading library. And that's great because there's a lot of ancient wisdom in there.
And you mentioned blogs being potentially a source of good information. Are there 2 or 3 blogs that you have particularly liked or do particularly like that you could recommend to people?
Yeah, so blogs are great because now all of a sudden you have some incredibly smart people who before may have had niche audiences or may not have, their full-time job is not to be a writer. So they have a voice now. And the reality is books are long because that's the size you need to justify printing up, cutting up a tree and printing a physical object and sending it to a bookshelf. When in reality, a lot of the wisdom in these books can be encapsulated in a few pages, but you can't charge somebody $20 retail for a couple of pages of info. So I feel like blogs are actually a very efficient source of information, and there's some absolutely brilliant people out there that you should take advantage of. Now the problem is if you read enough information on the internet or in books, it all counts to zero. and you're probably, you have a lot more facts, but you don't have much more wisdom. So you do have to be careful what sources you get information from. So one of the criteria I use, if somebody is a deep expert and they're talking about things, but then they start making errors in rationality or judgment or clear biases start showing through, then I basically put that blog or I put that book down because now I can't trust what they're saying.
You put it on probationary period?
Essentially, because you have to filter the information that comes at you. For example, you could read news articles all day long, and that would end up happening is you would end up a hyper-stressed, anxious individual, and you wouldn't even know why. At some core level, your brain would have been rewired to assume that every bad thing that's happening is happening next door instead of tens of thousands of miles away. So I filter my blogs very carefully. I have a long reading list that I use of a couple of hundred blogs, but like a recent standout is a blog called Melting Asphalt. It's written by a guy named Kevin Simler out of New York. I've never met him, but I read his blog and it was mind-blowing. He just really digs deep into all these topics that we take for granted. He figures out an orthogonal viewpoint on it. He makes some nice observations, but very often he'll end with questions or no conclusions. He'll just sort of meander off.
What types of topics does he explore?
He'll talk about like how the brain works, how human cognition works. He'll go into topics like why do we dance, basic economics theory leading to bad outcomes. I just highly recommend reading for anyone who's intellectually and scientifically curious. And what I like about it is that a lot of times he doesn't feel the need to wrap up with a conclusion.
Right.
It's very clear that he's exploring the space of learning. Like for example, your blog is great for what I consider sort of these quick one-off hacks, or you're going to surprise the twist, right? Tim's going to tell you how to peel a hard boiled egg instantly. By the way, I blew up one on my kitchen counter and yolk everywhere.
Yeah. Sometimes if it's soft boiled, not a good idea.
That was my learning there. So everyone has their style, but your style is very much you have to have a conclusion. I have not seen a Tim Ferriss blog post that does not lead to an actionable conclusion because you've built your brand around being a fast learner lifestyle hacker. I feel like if I go to Tim's blog, the promise that I get is I can get 98% of the benefit by doing 2% of the work, which is very seductive. Whereas on Melting Asphalt, what I know is going to happen, I'm going to have this massive exploration of a deeply interesting, complex topic with a couple of different hypotheses and no real conclusions.
Which I think is important for people to balance out with the prescriptive sort of Scooby snacks of how to solutions. I think it's important for people to be able to sit with uncertainty. I think that's why Richard Feynman's so interesting also. Training yourself to be a good scientist does not require college degree or a PhD. It requires, like you said, not fooling yourself and having good questions. And sometimes you just have to sit with those questions and evaluate whether they're the right questions or the wrong questions, or if there's a better tweak to that question. So it sounds like the Melting Asphalt author is kind of along the same lines of Freakonomics, but without necessarily the conclusions.
Yes, and in that sense, I actually like it better than Freakonomics. The original Freakonomics is fantastic, don't get me wrong, but now they just have to fill a lot more volume, so of course the quality goes down. But it's still, the Freakonomics is still great. Another one is, you introduced me to this guy, he's a childhood hero of mine growing up, Scott Adams. He's the creator of Dilbert, and he's completely self-made. And he put together Dilbert through a combination of business judgment and those hypnotic techniques that he learned, and writing techniques and public speaking techniques. And he's very transparent about it. And so he has a blog, the Dilbert blog, or Scott Adams blog, I forget the exact name, but it has some absolutely brilliant posts. And of course, like with anyone who is trying to figure the world out from scratch and is an orthogonal thinker, he's going to have some things that are completely wrong and very controversial, so he gets some flack over that. But there's some complete genius in there. He has a particular article, a particular blog post called "The Day You Became a Better Writer." And even though I am a very good writer, and I've been writing a lot since I was young, I still open up that blog post and I put it in the background anytime I'm writing anything that's important. It's that good.
Yeah.
I use it as my basic template for how to write well. And even think about the title, "The Day You Became a Better Writer." It's such a powerful title, absolutely. And so he teaches you in one small blog post the importance of surprise, the importance of headlines, the importance of being brief and direct and not using adjectives and adverbs, and using the active voice, not the passive voice, etc., etc. And if you consider yourself to not be a great writer, if you're not a 10 out of 10 writer already, or a 9 out of 10 already, that one blog post right there will change your writing style forever if you put your ego down and absorb it properly.
Yeah, Scott is great. He's also a great teacher. So I actually had my first real tennis lesson ever with Scott at his house, and he got me up to playing a volley game with him in about 20 minutes, and it was really outstanding. I'm going to have him on the podcast very shortly, which I'm excited about. Let me switch gears just a little bit and ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. Doesn't mean your answers have to be rapid fire, but I'll just throw out a couple to add some color and sort of connective tissue to what we're talking about. What are some of your biggest successes in the investing world? Just the sort of greatest hits of them all.
Yeah, so I've thrown a lot of and half of it is just showing up, frankly. If you're in the tech business, the best thing you can do for yourself is move to Silicon Valley. Just like if you're in acting, you probably have to go to Hollywood. And if you're in finance, you used to have to go to New York, although now there are more options. So I don't necessarily take credit for it in the same way that some people might say when they were very thoughtful and they did a lot of diligence. Some of it was luck, a lot of it was luck. But I was in the first round investor in Twitter when it was first getting started. I was first round investor in Uber when it was getting started. Thumbtack, Wanilo, Flippergram. There's a couple of others. I was early in Postmates. I was actually my first real investor in there after we got out of an incubator. There's a bunch of them that goes on and on. It's hard for me to draw the full list, but the fund that I ran is on track to return 10 or 20 times the capital that it had raised. And my individual portfolio is up by dozens of times.
Congratulations once again. What about
Dumb luck.
Well, let's talk about dumb luck on the flip side. So what are some of the biggest misses, like deals you've passed on? Your anti-portfolio. I think is it Sequoia that has that, or Excel?
Yeah. I think Bessemer pioneered it, but it's a nice thing to do, which is to keep yourself intellectually honest. Warren Buffett also pioneered it in a sense, in that he goes on record at the annual meetings and talks about their biggest mistakes from the previous year, and then he'll literally look at the previous annual meeting, what he talked about, and he'll go through and talk about what he said that was wrong. So to some extent, he does these annual meetings to keep himself intellectually honest. And in terms of biggest mistakes, I passed on Twilio very early on, and Jeff Lawson, the founder, was a great founder, and he gave me every chance to invest. I passed on Pinterest. Ben Silverman gave me every chance to invest. I was sitting in bed next to my, at the time, fiance. Wow. Yeah, exactly. We were that close. Sorry, Ben. No insinuation applied. I was sitting in bed next to my fiance, and Ben had we helped him a little bit with AngelList, although not a lot. We were just getting started, and he was raising money from Pinterest, and I saw the numbers go up month to month to month, and I had a chance to invest the first time.
I'm alright. How are you?
And I was sitting in bed next to my fiance, and she was obsessively using Pinterest, and she said, "I think you should do this." And I was like, "Oh, I don't get it. It's images. It's like flickery. Who's going to use this? How's this going to make money?" And so I passed on that. But I've got lots of stupid ones like that. I could have been advisor to YouTube in the early days. I helped them out, but I didn't take any stock, even though they were kind enough to offer it. There's lots and lots of misses. Square, I think, done the first round, I just thought it was too expensive. Even Twitter, where I did my fees, I did a much smaller piece than I was allocated because I thought it was too expensive. So
I did the same thing. Like 2009, I was like, this is never going to work out, but whatever. Put some money in. The rule you mentioned, Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett often talks about the two rules of investing. Rule one, don't lose money. Rule number two, pay attention to rule number one, something along those lines. When you've made investments that in retrospect you look back on and you're like, I knew it, I should have done that deal. What are the things that lead to you making those bad investments or overriding your rules or intuition?
yeah, I don't actually dwell on the bad investments much, because in the startup business, the exact opposite of Warren Buffett's value investment business. He's investing at a much later stage where you have a lot more data and you're putting much bigger amounts in there, and you're betting that you're going to make a compounded return of 17, 20, 30% a year. In the startup world, you're betting that 90% of these companies will go to zero or just return your money. And and then the remaining 10% are going to post huge multiples in markup. So the Twitter investment is probably now 400x. Uber is probably around 4,000x. So the return to the winners can be staggering and can overwhelm the losses in the portfolio. So you always focus on the upside. You don't really pay attention that much to the downside. And I would say most of my downside mistakes that I think about are mistakes of omission, not mistakes of commission. That said, mistakes of commission, usually it's because you didn't have time to get comfortable with the deal. You got caught up in the heat of it, where someone was pushing you to make a decision very quickly. You didn't have the data. You didn't have the gut feel for it. But you just went ahead and did it because of fear of missing out. So I think that's actually the worst reason to invest, is the fear of missing out. But that said, a great company will raise money very, very quickly. So very often you just don't have that much time. The mistake of commission that really gets me, the mistake of commission that really gets me is when I waste my time. So I haven't really regretted making bad investments. That's part of the game. And sometimes you make an investment, the company doesn't go that far, the founder offers to return the money. And I learned from Ron Conway, usually a great response to say, you know what, keep it, land on your feet, get your next job, start your next gig, I'll invest in that too. So it's not really about did you waste money, because like I said, your reputation matters. If it works out, then you're going to make more than enough. The thing that I regret is signing for advisory roles, because they take a lot of time, and then you're working with a founder and they're calling you for help all the time, and then you realize, they offered me what looked like free stuff, but nothing in life is free, and I don't really want to spend that much time with this person. Or even worse, they don't call you, they just feel guilty. Right? I'm getting all these advisory shares and I haven't done anything for the company. So if I had to watch out for a mistake as an early stage investor, is guard your time carefully. Guard your time more than you guard your money.
Right, the non-renewable resource versus the renewable.
Exactly.
When you think of the word, say, successful, who's the first person or people who come to mind for you?
Yeah, it's a good answer, because most people think someone is successful when they win the game, and it's whatever game they're playing, right? So if you're an athlete, you're going to think of successful someone who is a top athlete and wins that game. Or if you're a business, then you're going to think Elon Musk or someone of that sort. Or in my mind, I would have answered that question a little differently a few years ago. I would have said Steve Jobs, because he created something, or he was the driving force, part of the driving force and the spearhead for creating something that has changed the lives of all of humanity, and that's the iPhone. Think of Mark Andreessen as super successful, not because of his recent incarnation as a venture capitalist, which is an interesting one, but because of the incredible work that he did with Netscape. He commercialized the web browser. Satoshi Nakamoto is successful in the sense that he created Bitcoin, which is this incredible technological creation that will have repercussions for decades to come. So in the classic sense, I consider those creators and commercializers successful. And of course, Elon Musk, just because he changed everyone's viewpoint on what is possible with modern technology entrepreneurship. But that said, to me, the real winners are the ones who step out of the game entirely, who don't even play the game, who rise above it. And those are the people who have such internal mental and self-control and self-awareness that they need nothing from anybody else. So there are a couple of these characters that I know in my life, some older gentlemen that I like to kind of learn from, and we mentioned our Polish friend earlier. I would consider him successful because he doesn't need anything from anybody. He's at peace, he's at health, and whether he makes more money or less money, or the next person over from him does better or worse than him, has no effect on his mental state and bearing. And historically, I would say that the legendary Buddha or Krishnamurti, whose stuff that I like reading, they are successful, quote unquote, in the sense they step out of the game entirely. Winning or losing does not matter to them. There's some line that I read somewhere that all man's troubles arise because he cannot sit in a room quietly by himself for half an hour. Right? And if you could literally just sit, if you could just sit for 30 minutes and be happy, you are successful. And I think that is a very powerful place to be, but very few of us get.
Do you have a current meditative practice?
I have a couple. Like most people, I talk about doing it, but don't really do it all that well. I think meditation is like like a dieting, or where everyone's supposed to be following a regimen. Everyone says they do it, but nobody actually does it. The real set of people who meditate on a regular basis, I found, are pretty rare. And I've identified and tried at least 4 different forms of meditation. The one that I found that works the best for me is something called choiceless awareness, or non-judgmental awareness, where you essentially don't sit in a corner and don't stay quiet, you walk around. You're going about your daily business, but hopefully there's some nature around, you're not talking to somebody else. And what you practice is you just learn to accept that moment that you're in without making judgments. You don't say, oh, there's a homeless guy over there, I better cross the street. You don't look at 2 people running by and say, oh, he's out of shape, or I'm in better shape than him, or that person's better than me, or this one's better, or I should get a coffee, or whatever. You just don't make any decisions. You don't judge anything. You just accept everything. And if you do that, I find if I do that even for 10 or 15 minutes walking around, I end up in a very peaceful, grateful state. And so that one works well for me.
And when those thoughts come up, right? When you see the guy with the bad hairdo, and you're like, that guy has no business having that unmanageable hairdo, or whatever ridiculous thought comes to mind. What is the internal response to that?
What I do is, for those of you who program, I'm basically trying to run my brain debugger mode. I'm trying to be very, very alert and watch my thoughts. And I'm trying to judge anything, including your own thoughts. And there's a great definition that I read that says enlightenment is a space between your thoughts. Which means that enlightenment isn't this thing you achieve after 30 years sitting in a corner or a mountaintop. It's something you can achieve moment to moment, and you can be a certain percentage enlightened every single day. So you want to create as much space between your thoughts as possible. And the way you do that is by being aware of what your thoughts are, why you're having them. So if I saw the guy with the bad hairdo with a toupee, I would look at that and I would, at first I'd be like, he has a bad hairdo. And then I'd say, well, why am I laughing at him? Oh, to make me feel better about myself. And why am I trying to make me feel better about my own hairdo? Oh, because I'm losing my hair and I'm afraid it's going to go away. And what I find is that 90% of thoughts that I have are fear. 90% are fear-based. The other 10% are like desire-based. And as any...
Very tactful way to put it.
Yeah, and as any Buddhist will tell you, that desire is just fear by eliminating. It's the other point.
I think you're talking about something else entirely. There's this cartoon, I don't know if you know who Harry Crumb is. He has all these very sort of profane comic strips and was very famous, and there's a great documentary about him as well. Harry Crumb, I think that's actually a comedy, but R. Crumb, maybe I'm mixing up names. Somebody can correct me in the comments, but there's this one cartoon of his. I think it's a single cell, kind of like The Far Side, in a format, and it's basically a drawing of people on the street in Manhattan, and every man has a thought bubble above his head with a vagina in it, and every woman has a thought bubble above her head with a penis, and there's everybody laughing.
Well, that's why the Adam and Eve story is that, right? Original sin is lust. It's the thing that makes you fall out of heaven. The same way, maybe some of you read this book called Siddhartha, but it's a beautiful parallel story to The Making of the Buddha by Herman Hesse. It's a great book, I highly recommend it. But even in that book, our protagonist is out there seeking enlightenment, and it gets really close, and the thing that drops him out of it is lust. He meets a woman that he feels lustful towards, and that sort of slowly becomes his undoing into everything. But anyway, so to answer your original question, when I'm doing the choices of awareness form of meditation, which by the way, isn't, as far as I can tell, it's not taught in any school. It's something that I discovered mostly by reading enough of Krishnamurti's book and piecing together what he meant, because he's not a very clear speaker at times, or he is clear but a very different kind of way. And then I realized that, okay, so the point of meditation is to clear your mind. And the way to clear your mind is, yes, you can sit in the corner and struggle with it, which doesn't really get you the outcome, or you can do transcendental meditation, which is where you're using this chanting to create a white noise in your head to bury your thoughts, or you can just very keenly, very alertly be aware of your thoughts as they happen. And as you watch them, you realize how many of them are just fear-based. And the moment you recognize this fear, without even trying, it sort of goes away. And then after a while, your mind quietens. And when your mind quietens, you stop taking everything around you for granted. You start noticing the details of, oh my God, look at such a beautiful place. It's so great that it clothes on me. I can go to Starbucks and get a coffee anytime I want. How rich am I? Look at these people. Each one has a perfectly valid and complete life of their own in their own heads that's going on. So it sort of drops us out. It pops us out of the story, the dream that we're always in, the story that we're constantly telling ourselves. And if you stop talking to yourself for even 10 minutes, or if you stop obsessing over your own story for even 10 minutes, you'll realize that we are really far up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that life is pretty good.
Yeah, totally agreed. And for people who are looking for a little teaser on this, I think a very good one is a lecture by Sam Harris called Waking Up, and it covers he's a PhD in neuroscience, so he's also been on the podcast. If you just go to 4hourweek, allspelledout.com/Vimeo, that'll take you straight to a page that has a sample kind of trailer that people can check out. Robert Crumb was the name of the cartoonist, just as a side note for people who are interested. He was very fond of women with thick legs, and also fond of drawing weird, like, electrical instruments. In any case, something to check out. What is a bad habit that you're working to overcome right now?
Very good question. So this is something that I learned through our Polish trainer friend Victor. Victor. Habits are everything. Everything. I think that we are trained in habits from when we were children, including potty training and when to cry, when not to, and how to smile and when not to, and all these things become habits. These are all behaviors that we learn and that we then integrate into ourselves. And then what ends up happening when we're older is that we're a collection of thousands, maybe tens of thousands of habits that are constantly running subconsciously, and they're internalized, and then we have a little bit of extra brain power in our neocortex for solving new problems. And so you become your habits. And what really brought this to life for me is our friend, our trainer, gave me a routine to do every single day. And before that, I had never worked out every single day. And it's a light workout, it's not tough on your body, but I did this workout every single day, and I realized just the incredible, astonishing transformation that it had upon me, both physically and mentally, because I think to have peace of mind, you have to have peace of body first. So that taught me the power of habits, and after that, I started realizing that it's all about habits. So at any given time now, within a 6-month period, I'm either trying to pick up a good habit or I'm discarding a previously bad habit. And it takes time. So, for example, if someone says, I want to be fit, I want to be healthy, but right now I'm out of shape and I'm fat, well, nothing is going to work for you in 3 months. It's going to be sustainable. It's going to be a 10-year journey at least. And in
Not
a
my
10-year
jawline.
journey, what you're going to do is every 6 months or every 3 months, depending how fast you can do it, you're going to break bad habits and you're going to replace them with pick up good habits. So I think it is all about habits. There is nothing else.
So, I was just going to add some color to what you said. So for those people who are curious, the morning routine it's basically a mobility movement practice. It's not intended to give you a big burn or anything like that. And you're basically taking your joints to the end range of movement. And I think what's very unique about it also, and this is ties into the Larry Hamilton pool training and so on that was in a previous episode, is that you're controlling your breathing in a very particular way and holding your breath at certain moments. And I think that has a lot to do with the kind of present state value of that routine. But that's just one man's opinion. Furthermore, I'd like to just add, and since you're so forthcoming in a valuable way with pushing back, I'm going to push back a little bit, or maybe just revise from my mind what you said about the 3 months versus 10 years. So if you're fat, you can make a tremendous. I think that people underestimate what can be done in a short period of time, but they underestimate how quickly they can fall back into bad habits.
Yes. So that's absolutely right.
Yeah. So it's a long-term project because it's not a diet; it's a way of eating, for instance, that's required to keep you from not being fat in the future, right? But you can lose, say, 20 pounds a month and do it surprisingly easily. But like you said, you have to sort of keep track of those habits, and I think measurement is a really great way to concretize. That's probably another word. Make concrete, as Don King. These types of changes. The Power of Habit by Duhigg is actually a very good book on this type of thing as well.
Yeah, so basically, like examples of habits I picked up in the last 12 months or I'm still working on. I'm one of these people who wants everything. Right? So I don't want to give up anything. So, for example, if I want to stop eating bad foods, if I want to lose weight, if I want to fixate my diet, I don't go around, I don't say, these foods are bad, I'm not going to eat them, and then suffer, and then feel like I'm not eating tasty food. And instead, what I do is I do some combination of changing my taste buds to actually like the foods that are healthier for me, and substituting unhealthy tasty foods with healthy tasty foods. So that I can sustain it forever. I'm not interested in anything that is unsustainable or even hard to sustain. I want my life to be effortless. So once I've created a good habit, it has to be the kind of habit that I can sustain with no effort. The classic example for most people who have successfully lost weight in the last decade is most of them, not all, but most of them have been on some variation of a low sugar diet, or a paleo diet, or something where they're just, or a slow carb diet, where they're just watching simple carbs. And if you stay in one of those diets for a little while, what you realize is you lose your sweet tooth. And when you drink like a sugary drink, it's an overwhelming amount of sugar. It just doesn't taste good. So I think there are ways to fix your habits and do it in a very sustainable, gentle way. So most recently, I've developed a lot more Japanese tastes in eating, which has helped me a lot because now the food that I find tasty and flavorful is actually not sauce, not curry, not cream, not carb. And I find that kind of food sloppy. I find it hard to even look at.
So this ties into, not to interrupt, but I was going to ask you, and I suspect this is related, what $100 or less purchases most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months, and I think this might tie in.
It's a teppanyaki grill. It's like a little tabletop grill. And what I learned was that for food, the freshness and quality of the food going straight from the grill to your mouth is way more important than what you do with it. For example, in most recipes at most restaurants, we sauce the heck out of everything, and we cream it, and we over-prepare it, we over-process it, because it's sitting under a heat lamp for 10 minutes, and by the time it gets from the cook to your plate, to your mouth, 15 minutes have passed, and that's an eternity when it comes to food. Whereas the Japanese teppanyaki style of cooking is you have a tabletop grill, and you have high-quality meats and vegetables, and you slice them thin, and you put them on top, and you cook them a minute later, and then it goes straight from the grill to your mouth within 5 or 10 seconds. And literally all it needs is salt, and maybe not even that. And you can cook the vegetables and the oils from the meat, and it's the best tasting meal that I can imagine. When I eat out now, I feel like I'm making a sacrifice on taste. So my meals at home taste better, and they're very simple to prepare. And the hack is straight from the grill to your mouth, because we're evolved as humans to eat cooking around the fire. We're not evolved, this is back to my evolution's binding theory, we're not used to somebody going off and cooking the food and then coming to us 10, 15 minutes later with a meat that's got cold on the plate, but now to make it taste good, they put in all kinds of sauces on top. So that is an example of a hack, and that $50 grill that I bought is the best investment for my health that I've ever made.
Do you know the brand offhand?
I think it's a Presto tabletop grill. It's not perfect because it's got the non-stick surface on it, and I would rather not deal with whatever chemicals are coming out of there, but it's a start. The same way you do this workout that we were talking about earlier, it's done with a light 20-pound pair of dumbbells, which I bought at Sports Base for $20. And the beauty is I can do that anywhere I am. I can do that in my hotel room, I can do that in my bedroom, I can do that first thing when I roll out of bed. So there's no overhead going to the gym. So this new daily workout for me, because it's only 20, 30 minutes, right in my living room takes me less time than the old model of getting into a car and going to the gym and working with a trainer. This is all the overhead that was involved in that model. So I think what you want to find is in habits that are actually more pleasurable, that are easier, and then they replace your bad habits or your not as good habits. So the most recent one was I dropped caffeine, for example, which was great. It was fantastic. And I'm dropping hard alcohol altogether, and even wine I don't really drink much anymore. So those seem to me almost unconquerable. For anyone who's gotten used to drinking a lot, it seems like a really difficult habit to break, but it is breakable.
So how did you crack caffeine, and why did you feel the need to crack caffeine?
Well, I had a health issue a few months back, which is a great wake-up call. I think at the beginning of this session, I talked about how everything great comes from something bad. And so one of the definitions, Krishnamurti has a definition of suffering that I really liked, where he says, suffering is that moment when you see reality exactly as it is, when you can no longer run away from it, when you can no longer deny it. For example, you have a bad relationship with your wife, you're in denial about the whole thing, you're always covering it up, you're always sort of escaping around it, or putting a finger in the dike and making it work, and then one morning you wake up and she leaves you. And you're in suffering, you're in pain, and the suffering is there because now you can no longer deny that things were going poorly. There's no more denial, you're forced to face reality. And when you face reality, that is when you will change. So I always look upon suffering as a teacher. Now it's hard to do when you're actually going through it, but when you're not, that's how you should prepare yourself for it. So in this case, I actually had a bacterial infection, is what it turned out to be, but it could have been a lot worse. So my internal state was bad. I was unhealthy, not feeling well. So literally in 1 week, I dropped alcohol, caffeine, dairy, red meat. Went completely zero carb. Basically, I just switched entirely to meat, salad, water, and all my bad habits disappeared overnight because my body was giving me a very tight feedback loop. Oh, eat the wrong thing, you feel terrible. And so that was a gift, because when I'm 41, my body turns around and tells me, this is how you need to eat to be healthy. And if I ate perfectly, then the symptoms were a lot less worse. Now, it was a bacterial issue, antibiotics killed it, but it was actually amazing, because outside of the issues I was having from the health condition, I felt great. I felt high energy, I felt clear-headed, I felt light of feet and light of mind. And I was never before aware of what caffeine does to you. I think for those of us who drink a lot of coffee, slide into it without really realizing what's going on. And once you stop caffeine, for 2 weeks I was really tired and sleepy, but then I became aware caffeine is a real stimulant. What it would do is in the morning before I had my coffee, I would wake up like a zombie. I would be groggy and not quite functional. And then I'd have my coffee and I would be functional, but what happened is my heart rate would be slightly elevated and I would be slightly stimulated. It's absolutely stimulant. And then I would run for about 6 or 7 hours until my next coffee. And then it would slow down, then I would crash, and then it would be low energy for the night. And when I was forced to drop caffeine, I realized how I was very consistent energy. I didn't get that stimulation boost at the beginning, but I also didn't get that crash at the end. And as we all know, the candle that burns twice as bright wears half as long. So I decided that I no longer wanted to do that to myself. I did not want to overclock my body every single day of its life, because I'm sure that leads to negative repercussions near the end of your life.
Let me add a couple of thoughts to a number of things you said. So the first is with sugar cravings, just for people who want to cut back on sugar or simple sugars. Two things that are surprisingly effective for combating sugar cravings, particularly if you've just gone onto a low carb diet or slow carb diet, for instance, paleo, keto, whatever, is number one, make sure you're getting enough sodium, make sure you're getting enough salt. So a lot of people who go onto a lower carb diet, because each gram of carbohydrate can hold about 4 grams of water, they start shedding water. It's a diuretic. And they start craving salt, but they don't realize that, so they start eating carbs again. And so what I'll do is I'll just sprinkle some sea salt or whatever into a couple of glasses of water throughout the day. And obviously I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but that's one. The second is branching the acids. So you can take branching the
那什么东西？
我那边老板拿来吃吃看。
哦，好，这看过去好吃，会不会好吃？
好挺好吃。
without having to ingest carbs, which is kind of
我去开车了，开我的车看看开得了。
so you gain less water.
真的
怎么样？好吃
真
吗？
的，
嗯，
And then the
这么晚看，等到白天看
我。开白天车太多
And。I think this was actually also from Krishnamurti, in fact, is that sometimes it's easiest, paradoxically, or ironically, maybe counterintuitively, probably a better word, to change a bunch of behaviors at once. And so when you are adding behaviors, I think that it's often best to do one at a time. And I think there's a lot of science to support this. When you're subtracting behaviors or inputs like caffeine, sugar, alcohol, it's sometimes easiest to subtract them all because they're interdependent, right? A lot of people are like, well, I smoke, and then I drink, and then I eat a pizza, right? They're all interwoven cues. So I think that a great way to say remove caffeine is to remove a bunch of those negative inputs at once. And I did that by going to a 3-day meditation retreat for transcendental meditation, and that provided, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday necessary to sort of get over that initial hump, which was at the Center for Noetic Sciences, I think, up in Northern California. But you mentioned, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you're spot on correct. Krishnamurti is a very uncompromising character, and for a lot of people, it can be tough to read extreme point of view that doesn't even make sense to them. But one of the things that he talks about is that an internal state of revolution, and so you should always be internally ready for a complete change. Whenever we say, I'm going to try to do something, or I'm going to form a habit, or I'm going to become something, we're sort of moving out. We're just saying to ourselves, I'm going to buy myself some more time to do something. And the reality is most of us, when our emotions want us to do something, we just do it. If you want to go approach that pretty girl, or if you want to have that drink, or if you really desire something, you just go do it. And so when you go about saying, well, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to be that, you're really putting it off. You're giving yourself an out. So at least if you're self-aware, what you can say is, okay, I say I want to do this, but I don't really, because if I really wanted to do it, I would just do it. Or I would commit externally to enough people, all my friends and family, and they would say, hey, I thought you were going to do this thing, you would stop smoking, you would stop drinking, what happened, why are you in front of me? For example, if you want to quit smoking, all you have to do is literally go to everybody you know and say, I have quit smoking. I did it. I give you my word, I am not smoking. That's it. That's all you need to do. Go ahead. Go ahead. Right? But most of us say that, we're not quite ready for it, so we know we don't want to commit ourselves that extremely. So because of that, I think it's important to be honest with yourself and say, okay, you know what? I'm not ready to give up smoking. I do like it too much. It's going to be too hard for me to give up. I'm not going to be able to replace it. So let me set a more reasonable goal for myself, which is going to cut down to the following amount per week. And I'm going to commit to that externally. And then I'm going to work on that for 3 or 6 months. And when I get there, then I'll take the next step as opposed to beating myself up over it. So I think you're right in that when you really want to change, you just change. But most of us don't really want to change. They don't want to go through the pain just yet. So at least recognize it, be aware of it, and then give yourself a smaller change that you can actually carry out.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you wanted to change something, and the public pronouncement is a good example of this, you need incentives, whether it's the carrot or the stick, because self-control is really overrated. And if you've had trouble making the change, clearly the incentives haven't worked before, they've been non-existent, right? So I'm reading a book right now for helping me train my puppy, which is called Don't Shoot the Dog. It's by Karen Pryor. It might be out of print, but you can get it used. And Karen Pryor, the title's very misleading because it's actually about behavioral modification. And Karen Pryor used to be a dolphin trainer or a marine mammal trainer, also worked with orcas. And so she would use a clicker, this sound, and then translate that over to dogs. And she talked about superstitious behavior from dogs who said every time you bend at the waist and say sit, you think they're looking at your hand or listening to you, but they're actually watching you bend at the waist. And so they start sitting at weird times and they're like, what the hell's going on? And it's a superstitious behavior. And how she's helped her friends or humans do the same thing, say superstition about fencing competitions. This one friend always needed his favorite, not sure what not rapier, but whatever the hell the sword is, the poker, whatever that thing is called. And when he forgot it at his apartment, he got to the competition, had to use another one, and was in this really superstitious, negative state of mind and lost, right? So he went through and identified, with her help, sort of the 15 superstitious behaviors he had associated with it, and trained those things out of himself, which led to a lot of performance enhancement, right? And also, it's a great book, you should check it out. But where I was going with that is set punishments or rewards, and a very easy way to do that is with betting pools. You can also use a tool like Stick, STICKK.com, or DietBet.com, but for those people who want more, check out just search Stakes, STAKES, and then 4-Hour Chef, and there's a bunch of stuff online about how to set up those consequences, right?
It absolutely works. I started my first company that way. I was working at this tech company called At Home Network, and I told everybody around me, my boss, my coworkers, my friends, I said, well, Silicon Valley, all these other people are starting companies. Looks like they can do it. I'm going to start a company. I'm just here temporarily. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to start a company. I told everybody, and I wasn't meaning to actually trick myself into it. It wasn't a deliberate calculated thing. I was just venting, talking out loud, being overly honest. But I actually didn't, because this is 1996. It was a much scarier, more difficult proposition to start a company then. And sure enough, everyone started coming to me and says, what are you still doing there? I thought you were leaving to start a company. Wow, you're still here. That's a while ago you said that. And then I was literally embarrassed into starting my first company.
So if you hadn't harnessed the power of shame, you might still be clocking in as some type of corporate drone,
Probably. But Scott Adams had a version of this where he would fold in consistency bias in himself. So, their biases can work for you. If you know the set of biases that are out there, you can use them against yourself. And so, Scott Adams had this thing when I think he was working for Pac Bell, and he wanted to be a great cartoonist. He would show up to work really early in the morning, like 4 or 5 a.m., and he would go to the bathroom and he would stand in front of the mirror, and he would repeat to himself for 30 minutes like a crazy person. He would say, I'm going to be a great cartoonist. I am going to be a great cartoonist. I am going to be a great cartoonist. And then he had programmed himself, and he had to be consistent with his own pronouncements to himself, or it would destroy his ego. So then he had to go and just he did a lot of drawing, he did a lot of cartooning. So there are lots of ways to hack yourself. Every time you find a weakness about yourself, you can actually turn it to the positive. You can use that to hack your own brain, hack your own mind, to get to where you need.
That's super hardcore. I'm going to have to talk about that. What is the book that you have gifted most to other people from books?
In the last year, it's probably *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari. I hope I'm saying his name correctly.
Sapiens, like Homo sapiens.
Exactly. It's a history of the human species written by a professor of history in Israel. It's absolutely mind-blowing. It's a very orthogonal view on humans clinically as we are, and he starts out from the point of view that.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you explain orthogonal? It's very common in Silicon Valley, but for people who may not know what that means.
Orthogonal means it kind of comes out of left field. It doesn't line up with your normal way of thinking. I don't know if it's technical. It's actually a geometric term, where something can be running on a different axis. So he basically comes at it from left field, and he says, let's take a look at human beings, the species. Let's look at them like an anthropologist or a zoologist would look at this animal, and what's different about this animal. And so he comes to some very, very startling conclusions. He talks about how humans are the first animals that were able to tell each other stories, and those stories that talked about things that weren't actually going on around them allowed humans to self-organize. For example, the Neanderthals were probably stronger than us physically, but you could only organize Neanderthals by blood. So you got 100 of them who are related who could gang up maybe to fight a war, but you could unite 5,000 or 50,000 humans under the banner of being Christian, because we all believe this story. He talks about corporations are a story, religion is a story, even the fact that we're talking and I'm someone that you want to interview, that's just a story in our heads. The reality is actually quite different. So he starts with that thesis that humans are these storytelling monkeys who then get out of control. And he basically documents the genocide of every other species in this earth, or genocide or domestication by humans. And then basically shows, he doesn't use the word AI, but we're sort of the first artificial intelligence, as far as every other creature is concerned, that overran the earth and took it over as a resource. And he comes to all these really interesting, startling conclusions. Like, he talks about how empires have never been overthrown from within. Instead, the children of the losers get kind of brainwashed into thinking they're part of the victors. He talks about how every generation is a form of racism, where they basically treat other people, some class of people, as dirty and polluted and not to intermingle with our kind. And he shows how in our modern society there's rich versus poor. So we think poor people should live in different neighborhoods. We don't think they should go to the same schools. We don't want our college-educated children marrying a non-college-educated blue-collar worker. But then the biggest predictor of poverty or wealth is being born poor or being born wealthy. So it's kind of the racism of our times. But I don't want to do the book injustice. I just gave away a lot of copies, and I feel like people should read it. Before that, I was The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley, or in fact anything by Matt Ridley I thought was really provocative and eye-opening. Poor Charlie's Almanac, which is the
great one.
Charlie Munger's book, probably the best book on business, quote-unquote, that I've ever read. I try not to read business books for the most part, because they're very simple ideas wrapped up in a lot of pages.